The image of Washington's reflecting pool turning murky green, peeling and resembling an actual swamp practically writes its own satire. A monument designed to reflect the nation's ideals instead reflects more blatant than ever corruption on around its 250th birthday. The symbolism is so unsubtle that a novelist would be accused of laying it on too thick. The political analogy would go something like this. A known con man and serial liar rose to power, promising to drain the swamp. The phrase implied reducing that corruption, limiting the influence of lobbyists, breaking the grip of entrenched interests, and restoring government accountability, and any of us who know how to spot logical fallacies knew the opposite would occur. Instead of shrinking the influence of special interests, Washington became increasingly more than ever populated by godzillionaires, corporate lobbyists, culty political loyalists, and family-connected figures, one of whom, John Cafaro, a convicted felon who literally looks like a cartoon Batman villain, who the commander-in-chief convicted felon gave a Halliburton-style no-bid contract to do a bare minimum job on the national monument, and whose company is literally called Green Water Solutions, resulted in turning the reflecting pool from its usually bluish-grayish, when often overcast in DC, into a green, toxic algae body of water, a literal swamp. The figurative and now sometimes literal swamp is not merely that special interests remain influential. Special interests have always existed. The complaint is that influence became more naked, more transactional, and less constrained by traditional norms. From that perspective, the slogan, "Drain the swamp," becomes a kind of Orwellian inversion. The swamp was not drained, but refilled, and alligators simply received better propaganda. However, there is an important distinction between corruption as a political insult and corruption as a measurable historical claim. Trump transformed corruption from something politicians traditionally concealed into something often performed in public. The old style of machine politics, at least, maintained the courtesy of embarrassment. The modern style frequently appears to regard transparency not as a remedy, but as a shield. This is where the reflecting pool metaphor becomes especially sharp. A reflecting pool is supposed to allow a nation to see itself clearly. A swamp obscures reflection, and there is a final irony. Populist movements often succeed because they correctly identify genuine public grievances. Many Americans were right to be angry about elite capture, inequality, revolving door politics, and institutional arrogance. But because racism is the real underlying fuel of conservatism, they stupidly blamed the wrong end of the socioeconomic spectrum, poor brown and black immigrants, rather than the real villains, Epstein-class morbidly rich oligarchs who have rigged the system in their favor, including electing one. One might say the tragedy is not that the swamp remained. Washington has always contained lobbyists, influence peddlers, opportunists, and courtiers. The tragedy is that an electorate furious about corruption was persuaded to mistake the loudest crocodile for the drainage engineer.